Hey everyone, I'm Charting Man Dan with the Chart Guys, trading cannabis stocks for the last 14 years. In this video, we're going to shift focus a little bit while still checking in on that sector, but I personally am going to be focusing on psychedelics from here on out, as I believe that is where there is more opportunity, and the bears are going to be keeping an eye on the cannabis sector to short lower highs. I'll tell you what I mean. All right, so again, we just have to be real, which I'm going to be in this video. I wish things were bullish. Wish things went differently, but what I want doesn't matter in the game of flashing numbers, and I have to react to what is in front of my face because that is the only truth in the markets, and what I want is meaningless. So, we had pretty much the worst case scenario for the vote outcome. Amendment 3 fails, Republicans get the presidency, House, and Senate. And we failed 3 out of 4 measures. It's the worst result for statewide cannabis votes that I can remember in over a decade. 3 out of 4. So we just have to call it like it is. That was a disaster. And the market is responding accordingly to that. And, there's a lot of coping that goes on. And again, I'm not poking fun at anybody. I did all this. Every mistake that people are making in this sector, I've done plenty of times in my early career. And the cope that is going on to try and make excuses for why things can shift around are, number one, let's see what Trump and RFK Jr. do. Okay, that's fair enough. But again, we want to position ourselves with probability. Is it most likely that they're going to do something positive for cannabis anytime in the near-term future? For me, that answer is no. So I position myself in the most likely scenario, which is all cash. Again, I'm just executing the game plan that I laid out in advance. I said I was going to sell a bunch into the vote, into the run-up before the vote, which I did TCNNF in the 13 range. And then I said that if it's a failure, I'm out. I'm done with the sector. And that is the case for now. And I'll be back. I was gone all of 2022. I was not trading this bear sector in a bear market. And I come back when I feel there is opportunity for the longs because that's where I've made my money in this sector. And I gave back a bunch of profits on the year with the position that I did hold in TCNNF that I then sold on the dump, but still a green year in the sector. And that's the way I'm going to continue approaching things because that's been what is working. So again, one of the copes that's going on is that aspect that I mentioned, but also there's huge volume. Who's buying millions of dollars down here? Yes, somebody's buying without a doubt, but you can't just look at it and say, on the dump day, 50 million, 300 million MSOS was traded. Somebody's buying hundreds of millions of dollars. It's not that cut and dry in the sense that, I was doing a little bit of flipping that day. And if I buy 20,000 shares and sell 20,000 shares, I have zero position and I just accounted for 40,000 shares of volume. So just keep that in mind as well. It's not, someone's loading all of these shares down here. It's just trading activity that's going on. So right now, MSOS is testing all-time highs. We have a very clear resistance level that we rejected from the high of the gap down day. And then the high, again, it's not a coincidence, by 1 penny, the high of Friday hits that level. We close. That's the lowest close that MSOS has seen since the HHS announcement, way back when. And all-time highs or all-time lows are in play, 478. We're just a couple percent away from all-time lows. I expect we're going to get there. And again, it's just this is a 3-month bear flag, a long-term bear flag that's testing the all-time low. So again, I will, at the drop of a hat, come back if things change. We know we need headlines in this sector, and we know there's no looming headline on the horizon. At best, we get some Schedule 3 stuff, but it's a long, slow process, and we're looking months out, and time is the friend of the bears in this sector, as we know. So as long as 549 is resistance, the bears have complete control, and we're looking down at 478 all-time low support. Can we go down to $4? Absolutely, why not? So this is the weakest sector in the entire market. I trade a ton of other stuff. I watch everything in the market. Nothing is even close to being this weak. I guess you could say the solar sector, but even then, it's not. We have a lot of long-term progress here from where we were back in 2017, 2018. That's not the case in this sector. So again, just got to keep it real. TCNNF. So TCNNF, again, the run-up was nice, 50+%. The dump was excruciating, 50%. And again, the market makers opened it right at the low of the day and saw a bounce up from there. Look at the gaps. You've heard me say this 100 times. This is literally one of the highest probability signals that I've seen in markets is the TCNNF gaps. Look at how many times have I been talking about the gap up being for selling, gap up for selling. Look at the last 3 gap ups. It was here right before a big drop. It was here right before a big drop. And it was here on Friday. We gapped up by, just 2 pennies, but it's a gap up and the bears control the entirety of the day. Why did we reject from this level? If I were able to short, I would have shorted TCNNF Friday morning. Fidelity doesn't have shares. I'm just being honest and truthful with you all because it was a high probability setup. So this is Thursday as the bounce was getting going, and I was saying there's no resistance here. So there's no clear resistance in this range. We were trading at like 758 or something. No clear resistance. Hourly EMA 12 resistance is right around $8. Also, the previous support, now resistance, is right at $8. I would be scouting a short off of $8 if I were able to. And what do I mean previous support, now resistance? Look at what $8 has done in the past here. 804, 803. This is clearly a long-term support that had held for 9 months. And when you fall below a wall of support, it is now resistance. We got right up, we knocked on the door, and we failed. So now what do we expect? I expect a daily higher low compared to 517, and I expect to digest this range a little bit as we have new price discovery to the downside, and supply and demand does this a little bit to see where we stand. As far as TCNNF is concerned, we're still a good bit above that all-time low. It's, we have to drop 50% to get there. But again, we're in a longer, we're in a monthly, weekly, daily downtrend now. We lost all progress in this sector that 2024 was trying to build. Tilray, how many months have I been saying, if it's just a weekly lower high, nothing changes. The bulls have to break the weekly lower highs for anything to change. Otherwise, expect the same thing that we've been getting. Weekly resistance, 185. We top out at 182. Not a coincidence, right there. And we drop down and we're testing the low of 145. 145 is the all-time low. It's absolutely back on the table. And the simple statement now becomes anything under 182 is just a lower high, keeping the bears in complete control. CGC, after an earnings report, is testing the recent lows. So again, I just don't see, you look around at uranium names, all-time highs, semiconductors, big tech. Again, there's just no reason to be focusing on the weakest sector in markets with the potential of a lack of any catalyst in the near term when there's so much strength elsewhere. So that's what I'm going to be doing. Now, that said, psychedelic names are different. Think about what it would take. What headline would we need for MSOS to go 50% in 3 days? I mean, we've seen some examples, but we need, massive news. MNMD went 50% in 3 days, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Why? RFK Jr. mentioned psychedelics and the potential of a shift with the new administration and their viewpoint on psychedelics. These names also have less, there's definitely bag holders, we're in some prolonged downtrends, but it doesn't take as much dollar volume to get these names going versus the entire cannabis sector with that ETF. So I am focusing on psychedelic names because they do have a catalyst and we can get some potentially sexy headlines. And we haven't had, massive we've had runs in this sector, no doubt, but it's been a long time. And I do believe that they have better risk reward in the short term with where we stand. I mean, look at MNMD, 3-month time frame. So we had 6 months of bounce, 6 months of pullback. If these bulls get over 1222, we have a very long-term uptrend. We will have an uptrend on pretty much every time frame that matters to me. 3-month, monthly, weekly, daily. And for any other name to shape up a 3-month uptrend, what would it take for MSOS to shape up a 3-month uptrend? It would take over a year for that to shape up. And here we are back at square one, essentially. Unless, if we hold the all-time low and pull off a miracle. Again, very low probability, but still a possibility. I just don't think it's the likely scenario. So MNMD, at this point, we're scouting a daily higher low next consolidation. We'll be watching for back burners, oversold conditions. We had 5-minute oversold on Friday, led to a nice bounce. Big dump. It's very volatile. I don't love the liquidity on these names for trading. I wish they had the liquidity of, say, CGC, but, big drop, 14%. But then look at that bounce. First 5-minute oversold conditions, use your back burners for entries, 9% bounce in an hour and a half. I got stopped out. Did I? Yeah, I wasn't in for that. I got stopped out on one of these bounces. So I made an entry, I exit partial, stop out break even. And at this point, I'm watching for the possibility that we set an hourly lower high on Monday compared to 9:15. But again, this is momentum. This is high volume bull momentum. It's all about 983 as the next major resistance level. Other names in the sector, CMPS was the leader. It's MNMD now. Why is MNMD the leader? Again, that long-term progress on the trend. No other name has that. The dollar volume. So Friday we trade, we'll call it $35 million. Again, I'm using very rough math, but $35 million traded. CMPS Friday had more like $10 million traded. Look at it, we just hit all-time lows. So we're in a weekly downtrend here. There's still a lot of work to do. I did grab a little bit of a position here, again, just as a small starter, hoping it's a laggard, but also just ensuring that I keep an eye on it. Whenever I have so much stuff going on in the market with so many different sectors that I'm trading. Whenever I want to ensure that I keep an eye on something, I just grab a little piece so that it's in my portfolio. And when I check on my portfolio every day, it reminds me, oh yeah, keep an eye on this sector. Don't fall asleep on it. And so CMPS has a lot of work to do still. We've got to, you can call this a little daily uptrend, but we've got to confirm a weekly uptrend in CMPS for the first time in a few months if we're going to say anything is shifting. And what I'm hoping is that this most recent leg down is a bit of a climax bottom. CYBN, dollar volume on Friday, roughly $5 million traded. Again, just a lot more work. Well, it does have a weekly uptrend. Just got to be cautious of a rising wedge here. So you never want to break resistance straight into a pullback. Well, it's not a great rising wedge. Anyways, I'm keeping an eye on, we got the monthly long-term downtrend with anything under 1985 as a monthly lower high. That means we can go 50% and still form a monthly lower high. But we do have a weekly and daily uptrend. The most important support is 962. If that level is lost, it's a red flag. And again, just looking the day on Friday, compare that to MNMD, pretty different candles. Clearly, MNMD is the sector focus at the moment. ATAI, another small cap name here, also coming off a base at the all-time lows, trying to hold $1. Earnings are this coming week. But again, long-term progress needs to be made here. The biotech sector, I've seen plenty of times where this sector does have some correlation with the biotech sector. Again, it's not tick for tick, but there's plenty of times where I've seen it shape up. And so you look at XBI, and it just closed at 3-year highs almost. Trying to get a longer-term breakout going for the biotech sector, that would benefit psychedelics if the biotechs get a bid. And of course, again, we're just looking for headlines out of RFK Jr. in the new administration that is more favorable to psychedelics, and that would be some of the momentum behind this sector. And again, this isn't a top focus for me, this sector. This is just, I'll keep an eye on it, and I like it. I like the setup and the narrative a lot better than cannabis right now. And you better believe that, once we do finally get an MSOS bounce going, bears are just going to short a weekly lower high. We can bounce 30%, and bears will be all over a weekly lower high. So just remember that when you're in a downtrend on every time frame, every time you make progress on one time frame, you got to zoom out and remind yourself that we may just be forming another lower high on a longer term time frame. So again, just being as clear as I can be with my game plan for this sector, doing what has worked for me to trade this sector over the last 14 years, and I'll be back. Whether it's 3 months, 2 years, 5 years, I don't know, but I will be back at some point because there will be bull opportunity again, but I'm not going to fight what is clearly staring me in the face as far as what the charts are saying. So a disappointing end to 2024. That's the way it goes, and that's why we have to have game plans established for best case scenario and worst case scenario. The people commenting on my stuff saying, Amendment 3 is 100% passed. We have so many catalysts. What are you talking about? Selling, blah, blah, blah. It's just a humbling moment for us all to realize we don't know the future and we have to have game plans in place with that fact in mind. So I wish you all the best. I will see you at some point in the future. I will put out psychedelic videos every now and again, but again, my content obviously slows when I'm not actively trading the sector, cannabis. All right, do good things. See you sometime.